All right, I see that we are live streaming now. What time are we at? And it is 7:01. I do see Trustee Leonard here, but my understanding is Trustee Waters was going to chair this meeting, but unfortunately she is taken ill this afternoon. So I think I'm going to chair the meeting this evening, as long as there's no objections to that. Excellent. Well, first, I would just like to thank everyone for joining us via YouTube. It's a new time and a new way of conducting business, and so we will go slow, and we'll get through this. There may be a couple of bumps, but I think we'll be fine. So just as we get started, I'd like to recognize the traditional territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees Nations, where we live, we learn, and we do our work. Especially during these times, we need to take a little bit of an opportunity to reflect on that and really acknowledge the gratefulness that we have for being on this land. We have a beautiful, beautiful environment to have to be in isolation. So thank you everyone for coming. I will look on the screen to see your hand raised either via the Zoom hand raise or raise your hand, and we'll put you on the speakers list. As you know, our Operations and Planning Committee meeting is a more informal event, so hopefully we will be able to have some open discussion about what we are discussing. I'll do the best I can. Again, just get my attention if I do miss you. So that being said, I am looking for an approval of the agenda. Okay, so Trustee Leonard and Trustee Ryan Painter, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, and I should also, I'm going to just publicly state thank you. That while you see several trustees on the screen or as participants, the trustees that have the ability to vote on this committee are Trustee Leonard, Trustee Rob Painter, Trustee Hensa, and myself. So you won't see the other trustees voting, but everybody is welcome to join in the debate. So thank you for that approval. And our next item on the agenda is the budget presentations. And first up, we have the Greater Victoria Teachers Association. Winona, I'm going to pass it over to you. You got to unmute, Winona. Unmute.
Oh,
there you
wonderful. Go. Excellent point. So what I said was thanks, Anne. Thank you for giving the opportunity for us to present on our concerns. I did send you a letter or send it to Andre earlier, and you'll see that my presentation is not very different from that letter, but I think that'll give an opportunity for those listening at home to hear what our teachers' concerns are as well. Should I wait? Because Diane had her hand up. Oh no, we're good?
You had your volume really low, Winona, and it was really hard to hear you, but you're picking up volume as you go along, so it's good.
Okay, I think it's my internet connection. But
Secretary Morris does have a question. You have to.
Sorry, yep, I'm unmuting. And I wondered if we would give out the email address associated with tonight's meeting for the gallery to ask questions if they wanted to email something in.
Oh, that is an excellent idea. Do you have that address right in front of you?
Sure, I do. It's Ops Committee, OPPS Committee 0511 at sd61.bc.ca. So that's OPPS COMMITTEE 0511 at sd61.bc.ca. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. For those who are watching this on YouTube, if you send an email to that address with your question, later on we will endeavor to answer those as best we can through this method of technology. So thank you. And Winona, thank you very much for your patience. Back to you.
All right, I'll actually unmute myself this time. Okay. Thanks. The GVTA appreciates the opportunity to provide feedback on the district's 2020-2021 budget. The GVTA represents the largest employee group in the district with approximately 2,000 teachers working in a wide variety of roles. Setting the budget is an exercise in examining our underlying philosophy of education and setting priorities that best align with this philosophy. We hope you believe, as we do, that the primary function of public school is to enable children to access their full potential through a diverse, responsive, and meaningful education. In a time when we all acknowledge there is never quite enough money, we hope this budget will prioritize putting funds where they can be most effective in supporting our shared goal for education. The best value for money will be found when dollars are put directly into schools, where it stays as close to the students as possible. We look forward to further discussing about how the district can most effectively support teaching and learning in SD 61. Our current feedback prioritizes the following areas of need: avoiding cuts to direct student support, facilities, inclusion, professional development, in-service and training, recruitment, and retention. These areas reflect not only our anticipated priorities for the 2020-2021 school year, but also current identified areas of need. We look forward to conversations about how the current budget can be used effectively to support students and teachers in the district, including maintaining adequate staffing and maintaining adequate resources and materials for student learning as funded through school departmental budgets. The first piece is about avoiding cuts to direct student supports. The district has accumulated surplus, and this is the rainy day you've been saving for. Due to COVID-19, the district forecasts a loss of more than $6 million in international student tuition revenue. The Secretary Treasurer has advised that this loss be balanced entirely in portion by cutting more than 33.571 FTE. We propose that staffing levels should be maintained and smoothed by using funds in the accumulated surplus. Eliminating more than 30 positions will impact schools across the district, which is an excessive and unnecessary disruption when we anticipate the eventual return of these students. This revenue and an additional staffing need in the COVID-19 context. Another avenue to explore for avoiding cuts at the school level is examining district level administrator staffing for positions that can be eliminated through attrition or redeployment into schools. The GVTA has frequently expressed our concern about the number of people working in the Tolmie office at an arm's length from students. This has only been increasing despite facing resource shortages in schools. We urge the board to carefully weigh the efficacy of district level staffing against provision of school level services. In regards to facilities, we know the district has had ongoing problems with insufficient spaces in our buildings. With COVID-19 and physical distancing requirements, we anticipate this becoming more acute. We need to make sure that the facilities budget is sufficient for safe, hygienic, and effective teaching and learning. This year, we've had teachers working without appropriate classrooms or learning spaces for individual or small group support. Many classrooms are without running water to allow for regular hand washing. Many teachers are required to share spaces and squeeze into spaces that were never intended for teaching. The budget will need to prepare for changes to physical spaces to meet physical distancing requirements. In a number of schools, specialist teachers and prep teachers have no choice but to teach from a cart, rushing through the hallways from class to class with a cart full of materials, because they do not have consistent, dedicated space in the school. This is not a sustainable practice for teachers, and it is not safe in a pandemic. Additionally, this practice results in many classroom teachers without an appropriate space in the school to do their preparation when their prep coverage is occurring in their classroom. These conditions do not support safety or learning, and they are frustrating and demoralizing for teachers. Even before COVID-19, the GVTA was concerned about facilities, maintenance, and cleaning. Teachers regularly express frustration about the lack of custodial time in schools and lengthy waits for routine maintenance and repairs. In the context of COVID-19 and the necessity to avoid any kind of sickness, in order to eliminate staff working sick, it is imperative that the district plan for increased custodial staffing to maintain healthy building environments. On the topic of inclusion, there is widespread understanding that effective implementation of the model of full inclusion is expensive. The board's philosophical support for inclusion must be met with some financial support in order to adequately meet the needs of all students. Schools have been notified that their school-based inclusive learning funds have been decreased for the coming years. This is resulting in damaging cuts to teaching and EA staffing levels, with no clarity or explanation about the criteria for distribution of this funding. Despite these cuts, the needs remain. Staff and students deserve stability and clarity now more than ever. School-based teams are contractually required to make recommendations regarding assessment, programming, placement, and strategies to support students. Too often, these professionals are discouraged from making recommendations to support students' academic, physical, and social-emotional growth and well-being because of budgetary limitations. The GVTA encourages the district to budget not only for the minimum staffing requirements of the collective agreement, but also for the staffing and resources needed for meaningful inclusion. Smaller class sizes, additional teaching and support staff, time for consultation and collaboration, training and in-service, and provision of resources and equipment are all necessary supports. In recent years, the district has moved to close a number of programs that specifically serve students with special needs and to move towards full inclusion in the regular classroom. We are concerned that schools, students, and families no longer have access to a continuum of options for meeting students' needs. Where inclusion in regular classrooms is not adequately supported by additional staffing in and out of the classroom, training and in-service, and access to alternate facilities and materials, students are too often fully excluded from school when they are sent home or scheduled for less than full hours. We know that we have a number of students that will not be able to physically distance themselves. These students will require additional staffing. On the topic of professional development, the pandemic has suddenly thrust education into a new context. The 2020-2021 school year looks to be a year like no other we have experienced. There will be an intense and urgent need for funds to support teachers as they adapt and change their practice, and for teachers to have funding in order to collaborate and support each other. Professional development is crucial to success for teachers and students. Teachers are professionals who reflect on their students' needs to determine the best investment of time and resources. Our students' needs are diverse, and so are our teachers. A one-size-fits-all approach does not work, and in this context of change, teachers need to be able to determine their own individual needs. In recent years, the board has allocated an additional $100,000 to teachers' professional development. These funds have been appreciated and have enabled more teachers to participate in quality professional learning. Even with this additional funding, the GVTA has been forced to turn down many teachers' requests for funding from the Joint Professional Development Fund. Next year, we anticipate the need will be greater than it has ever been. Increased funding for teachers' autonomous professional development would not only support improved student learning, but would also be a sound investment in increasing teachers' efficacy, agency, enthusiasm, creativity, innovation, and morale. The recently ratified collective agreement will result in a one-time allocation of funds for early career teachers mentorship. This will be a welcome injection into our fledgling mentorship program, which will continue to need district-level funding in the 2021-22 and beyond. Mentorship has been highly successful and much appreciated in supporting new teachers and teachers in new assignments. In service and training. In addition to teachers' ability, excuse me. In addition to teachers' ability to access autonomous professional development, there are also common needs driven by necessary changes to teaching and learning conditions. The district also has obligations and priorities as an employer that require training or in-service for employees. Topics might include district policies and procedures, health and safety, or orientation for new employees. There are often attempts to schedule these activities for professional development days, which is not appropriate given teachers' right to autonomous decision-making about their professional development. The activities are then scheduled in addition to the regular workday, which means they are often rushed and resented. When the employer believes that a learning opportunity is valuable and necessary, they should demonstrate their commitment by providing a budget allowance for adequate release time for employees to complete this training. The GVTA appreciates the opportunity to provide feedback about our priorities for the district's 2020-2021 budget. We hope we have conveyed teachers valuable knowledge about budgeting decisions, how budgeting decisions impact education. We all want the best for the students in our schools. We look forward to ongoing discussion about the needs of teachers and students in the district now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Winona, for that. It was a very good summary. I am looking to if there are any questions, if you could. So I have Trustee Rob Painter.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple clusters of questions, so maybe I could throw a couple out and then I will take a back seat to see if anyone else has other questions. The first of these has to do with the downturn in international student funding or funding associated with the program. The first one I'm wondering about is the allocation between schools and districts. My understanding it's about a 50-50 split most of the time. And with respect to budget, I'm interested to know what that distribution is going to be as far as making up for the losses. Following on that, I'm wondering about the distribution of students. Are we talking mainly returning students who are going to be coming back to a school they're already attending, or are we talking new students? And my interest there is in wondering what we can do to seek to balance the distribution of these students, because the funding that comes with them is something that all the schools are going to be feeling loss of, certainly at the secondary levels. And I'd like to make sure that we're as equitable as possible in that respect. So I'll just hold at that point.
Okay, I think Secretary Treasurer.
So I'd like to say that the international student revenue allocation between school and district, I believe, and I can verify these, I believe the international program contributes 30% of its revenue or its profit. I have to clarify that, to the district on an annual basis. So I guess roughly 70% goes into schools and 30% lies in the district. And I would have to follow up and answer on a separate occasion the breakdown between the returning or the new. That's not data that I have at my fingertips. So I can add this to an FAQ along with the miscellaneous revenue that was asked a couple of meetings ago, and we can bring those answers back for the board for its deliberations.
Thank you. Trustee Painter, does that help? Excellent. And I'm going to go to Trustee McNally next.
Thanks, Chair. I'm wondering about the school-based inclusion funds decrease. Maybe I haven't been paying attention, but to hear that shocks me. So I'd like more information on what percentage, I guess, of school-based inclusion funds is being cut and the rationale for that. Yeah, it's distressing. I also, so far anyway, I'd also just like to say to clarify for people who are watching who may not know what a school-based team is, one of my former trustee colleagues who's no longer on the board seemed to think that a school-based team was, a speech language path, a counselor, a whole bunch of experts who just hung out at the school until they were needed. And that's not the case at all. A school-based team is teachers and EAs and the principal, and when you can get them scheduled in, itinerant speech language paths and counselors, and usually they occur at 8 a.m. So yeah, school-based team isn't always at the school. Anyway, back to my question about the school-based inclusion fund decrease. If I could get some information about that, please.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer.
Yes, that's also something I wanted clarification on. So I don't know if President Waldron can expand on that.
I like President Waldron. That's new for me. So I've had reports from several schools now. The most recent one came from Macaulay, where they said their funding had been cut. I want to say 30,000. I could find those emails and give you more information, but I've been getting frequent emails from teachers who sit on school-based teams saying that there's been some dramatic cuts made for next year, very concerned about their staffing levels, particularly around support staff. And that's where that comment came from. And I could certainly get more specifics from our staff reps as well on that piece.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah, so that's helpful information. I think what we can do is take a peek at how it compares to last year and bring that back as well.
Oops. Thank you. Yeah. Oops.
Chair, was that recognizing me to ask one more question, or should I wait? Can't hear you, Chair.
Sorry, I guess you may as well ask another question because I did not see Jane Massey unmute. So go ahead. And then we're going to go to Jane and then to Trustee Duncan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. Just one more question then about the what I heard to be a one-time mentorship grant for new teachers, and wondering how that decision was made and where the funding came from, and what is the rationale behind doing it one time. I don't think we're going to not have new teachers, although given the horrifying situations with COVID and enrollment, maybe we won't for a while. Anyway, could I have more information on the decision to make that a one-time grant and a little bit more about what it is?
Yes, I think that President Waldron would like to speak to that. Go for it.
Thank you, Trustee Whitaker. This is in relation to our new ratified collective agreement, the provincial language. One of the big goals this round of bargaining provincially was around recruitment and retention. So there were two pieces that were put in place because of them. One was an additional 1% increase to salary for people at the top of the grid. And then the other piece was this mentorship grant, so to speak, that would be as part of the collective agreement. So it's coming, I assume, from the Ministry of Education around that now that it's been ratified to support new teachers as well.
Thank you. Trustee McNally, does that answer your question?
Yes, Chair and President Waldron, it did.
Thank you. All right. Jane Massey.
I don't get to be President Massey?
I'm sorry. Yes, President Massey, you can all be presidents tonight.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to piggyback on what Winona said, and that I've had quite a number of EAs who have had hours cut. Sometimes whole positions are gone from schools, and you know, when an EA loses 2 hours, that's, you know, over 10% of their time, and it has a huge impact on them for sure. So it's definitely out there, and it's definitely happening for our members as well.
Thank you. Trustee Duncan.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I just had some questions that came out of the letter from the GVTA, which I really appreciate. You know, hearing from our teachers in writing, and I appreciate how sort of clear the letter was. But one of the things that came to mind that I certainly would like to know is how our inclusive learning funds are allocated. The basis for doing so, and whether there's any kind of you know, consultation element to that process. And then my other question was around district programs in general. I'd love some clarity on how it is that we go about reviewing our programs.
and I will go to, I think I will start with allocation with the Secretary Treasurer, and I'm not sure on the second part of your question if that is good to throw to Associate Superintendent Witten, but let's start with Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you. So I think on our May 4th staffing information night, page 28 of that handout kind of explained the number of designations we have at each school, which we know change from year to year, is multiplied by the ministry funding per the designation, and that's the SBIL in each school. So if there was an increase or decrease in the number of designations in a school, then the staffing would fluctuate from year to year. And then the school is given that funding. So the number of designations times the funding they generate through the operating grant. And then the principal of each school, based on the unique needs in their school, allocates those funds to support all the learners in the school. And that it includes teachers and education centers or education assistants depending on the needs of the learners. But I don't know if we might be able to expand on that more if I consult with the team.
Okay, thank you. And Associate Superintendent Witten, I'm wondering if you can speak to the district program and assessment.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to the former question about the school-based inclusive learning, year to year, we look at the students who are leaving and the students that are coming into each of the schools. And what we try to maintain is as little impact to the school budget as possible. So even though some schools may lose a student, we try to reflect a consistency across the years. So they may go up or down, but we try to limit that fluctuation so that they can maintain their staffing. But what we do every year is we maintain a contingency budget so that students who enter in after September 30th can receive support, and that we can plan for students that we didn't know were needing extra supports and give those funds into the school. So sometimes the school staff grows throughout the year. And then when we give the budget in April, the school staff goes back to what it was the last September. So they may feel a loss at times. And that is sometimes that temporary top up that we give for students who have come in that we did not anticipate. So there is some fluctuation, but we try and maintain it from year to year. And that's the April staffing to the April staffing.
Thank you for that. I see that President Waldron also had a comment, I think, to that.
I'm just curious if, and I'm not sure who would be able to answer this, if the Jackson Award and the change in some of those designations, I know they affected our collective agreement language, so class size, but did they also affect that other staffing in your? No. Okay.
No, because they still maintain a ministry designation and funding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Trustee Duncan?
Thanks, Chair. I just wondered, so during the previous presentation on staffing, we were told that there was also a top up. So in addition to the ministry targeted funding and the level 1 through 3 designations that attract that funding, we were also told that there's a top up that our district provides. And we saw that last year during our budget sessions that we topped it up as a district. So I'm wondering if someone could clarify for me how the top up is allocated to schools.
Kim?
Sorry. Okay. So just like, so we receive about $7,800 per student out of the block. And so we tend to take a lot of our itinerants out of there. So the School Act says we must be able to provide speech and some of the itinerant services, and those come out of the block. We don't say $500 out of $7,800 will go into inclusion or SBIL. It's just something we allocate in terms of the needs of the budget on the expense side, as opposed to the revenue that comes in through the block. It's just like we don't necessarily say how much money we spend on operations from the block. We don't say, well, we put $1,500 from the block into operations. So we do spend 1.5 times as much level 1, 2, 3 funding as we get in the inclusion or the learning support budget. But we don't have a breakdown necessarily of exactly what that is or how it's allocated to schools, because many of the services under the School Act out of the block are at a district level in terms of itinerant staff that work in all schools.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer. Whitten.
Just to answer the question with regards to the program, to do a review, we could do a review. What we do know is that we continue to provide funding in the programs in the schools that had programs in them. So Braefoot, Mackenzie still receives funding, FTE for teacher staffing, Lansdowne, Shoreline, Arbutus still maintains, and Cedar Hill still maintain the staffing, as well as Reynolds and Esquimalt. So we meet with the principals of those schools every year, at least once or twice a year. We go through the supports that they're providing for the students there. We look at things that we can learn from those areas into our other schools and share out across our schools. And then we also, when we have parents who reach out who want some specialized programming, because we know those schools have extra staffing, we sometimes speak with the staff or the principal of the school to see if we can place a student in that school, which is what we've done for the last 3 years with Arbutus and Reynolds.
Thank you. I believe Trustee Rob Painter.
Thank you. I was wondering if it's possible to get information about the amount of money that is currently being held or being planned for in the contingency funding, whether that's dollars or in percentage of the level 1, 2, 3 funding that we currently receive. I just want to understand, are we talking pennies, or are we talking significant amounts that could potentially have some bearing on what we're hearing right now?
Secretary Treasurer.
So again, in the staffing presentation on May 4th, slide number 29 indicates that we're holding about $300,000 back from about a $24.3 million budget or $24.6 million budget. And that represents about 1.3% of the entire budget. And that's to take care of fall enrollment or after the fall.
Excellent. Thank you. And Trustee McNally had another question as well.
Thanks, Chair. If I could just clarify for myself and for anybody else who might be interested, in the list of schools that Deputy Superintendent Whitten just gave us, those are schools that have extra staffing because once upon a time they had standalone programs which were behavior or students with dramatic needs for support. Those programs were dissolved except for, I just want to be clear, and make sure that I'm clear, except for Arbutus and Reynolds. Is that true? They still have specialized classrooms staffed with a high ratio of students to instructional personnel. Is that right, Arbutus and Reynolds? Through the chair to probably Deputy Superintendent Whitten.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so through the chair, I would say that for the schools that had low incidence programming, so the Esquimalt, Arbutus, Lansdowne, and Reynolds, those still have staffing in them and have specialized programming in those schools. For the schools that had programs that supported kids with challenging behaviors, they don't have segregated. They still have the staffing in the schools, but they don't have segregated programs with one classroom with children with challenging behaviors. So they're two separate programming options.
Thank you. If you could follow up just to ask what Arbutus is looking like for the coming year, and then I'll stop. What is through the chair to whoever has information at this point about what enrollment looks like for Arbutus, because the funding was no longer district program funding, is my understanding. It was school-based funding. Wrong. Okay, so there may be some clarification here.
Yeah, so for all of the schools I listed, and then I'll let Harold speak because he knows specifically for Arbutus, but all of the schools that used to have a program, they still receive the same funding from the district. So that funding has never been eliminated and they continue to have that. Harold can speak about the numbers at Arbutus, but Arbutus has funding that comes from the district to pay for the teachers in those programs.
There is, though, before we leave this topic, there is some significant difference in how that funding is received at the school level. And that's something that really needs to be clarified, because obviously it's quite confusing to people who aren't doing the funding. When Arbutus was considered a district program, the funding was different. And I heard a lot about funding being shifted to support students with special needs in another way. And I think we need to continually clarify that, because there is a murky aspect to it as far as I'm concerned.
So it would be interesting to clarify, because as far as from what we have provided for those schools, it's the same as it always has been. The one difference is that the students who generate ministry funds, that money goes directly to the school. So it doesn't, in the past, it used to sit at the district and then we would put the EAs in place. That's the change, is that that money that those students level 1 and level 2, that goes directly to the school and they place the EAs or create the hours for the EAs. So that's the one shift. Harold?
Hi, everybody. So with respect to Arbutus, all of the students that applied to get into the Arbutus programming were accommodated either at Arbutus, which currently has 9 students for the 2020-21 school year, and either there or at their catchment school or at Victor School. So we were able to accommodate parents and the needs of the child, including the cohort of students that were at Arbutus. There were 5 students that left grade 8, and they have all been accommodated at Reynolds in the programming at Reynolds there. So for a total of 11 students at the Reynolds program.
Thank you very much. I'm just, Trustee Duncan, I do see your hand up, but I wonder if these are all just general budget questions. If I could go to President Massey and have her do her presentation, and then maybe all of the questions can just continue around the budget, but let's get to her perspective first, if that's all right. There's no objection. Okay, I'm seeing the thumbs up. President Massey, are you good to go?
I'm good to go, but I'm going to be really short, because I'm going to apologize that mine is still on its way to Andre tonight in a written report. And I'll just say to piggyback again on Winona's report, thank you, that was awesome. And I think there's many times in your report we could insert QP 947 alongside our GVTA colleagues and share those same concerns. And we often address what's going on with our EAs. But in the report that I'm going to submit to Andre later on tonight, we're actually talking about clerical staffing within our schools and the huge inequities from elementary to middle to high, something we brought forward in 2015, the first time at our labor management meetings. And in fact, in May 2019, we began some meetings with the superintendent and some of her team about the inequities and getting it addressed. So we'll get it out to her, finish and get it to her tonight. I certainly hope you'll take the time to read it. And I'll gladly be available in between COVID-related questions to enjoy a change of pace and thought to anybody that answer any questions about that. So again, sorry I wasn't able to get it done sooner, but it will get there at some point tonight, Andre.
Excellent, thank you. And we will no doubt get our questions to you. So I am going to go back to Trustee Duncan then.
Thank you, Chair. So I had a couple of follow-up questions. I'm wondering in relation to the top up, I guess, again, mine's a two-part question. The first one is about the number, so how much money we're talking about. So the dollars and the percentage of the total inclusive learning budget that is district top up. So again, is not ministry per student funding, but sorry, per student with designations type funding, but is district funding that we're topping up. And then of that allocation of funding, if we, not if we know we have changed the way that we are doing inclusive learning in our district. One of those changes, of course, was around the availability of certain specialized programming at various schools, and Deputy Superintendent Whitten kindly listed off the schools where some of those changes have occurred. And I'm wondering, as I listen and I learn about how things have changed and how we are now allocating that budget, one of the things that struck me last year was that, we haven't removed budget, we haven't removed staffing from those schools where there used to be specific specialized programs. So it leads me to wonder, though, in not removing that funding, are we clear that there is still need at those particular schools for all of that funding? So, I mean, I think it's great that we're allocating to individual schools the money that comes with the pupils that attend those schools. But I'm wondering, of the other allocation, the top up, the extent of that is still being provided to schools, whether we know or how we know that there's still need there.
Good question. Who wants to field that one? So, Secretary Treasurer.
I'll start with that. That is something when I think on the May 4th presentation as well, it's one of the equity questions I ask myself. And so I do think it needs to be peeled back a little more, Trustee Duncan. And that's just my opinion. As I said, that was an opinion I had when I went through the exercise of producing that presentation. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to start understanding about the district. And I think it's a very good question.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments on that? President Walter.
I am curious, Trustee Whitaker, I'm not sure who could answer the question, but I am aware that their staff, there was a teacher made access to needs at Mackenzie this year, and I hadn't been aware that they'd gone down a division. So I'm wondering why I didn't know that until I saw the list of access to needs teachers this week, and was surprised to see that the teacher that has been the additional sort of teacher funded through that what was before the behavior support program has been declared access to needs. And I wondered if that was because the school went down a division, or if it is indeed not funding that additional piece there anymore.
Thank you. Does somebody want to take that one?
I think that would be one we would take away and look with them at their staffing.
All right. Okay, do we have any other questions or comments on where we are at now? No. Okay, the agenda on my other screen has, oh, Trustee Duncan, go ahead.
Sorry, I hate to overdo it with the questions, but I just had one more question I'd really love some clarity on, and it's around the ISP, the staffing, the 30 staff members. And I'm wondering to what extent it's correct to say that through retirements and attrition and redeployments, that the extent to which those staff, those 30, will not actually technically be lost. If I get some clarity on that, that would be really helpful.
Go ahead, Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah, I saw something about that. I think it's in the mid to high 20s, but can definitely bring that back as well. So you want to know the net result of wherever we increased teaching staffing and we decreased as a result of ISP, what the net result is in the overall staffing in GBTA. Is that right?
Yeah, just from the lens of how many frontline, you know, resources are we losing exactly.
You bet. We'll
Thank
bring
you. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Can I also ask if we have received any email questions?
We have not received any email questions yet.
Oh, there you are. Okay. And I will ask one more time if we have any other questions, or I guess last call on the agenda, because I believe our next item is to adjourn. Okay, so seeing none, can motion to, or is that a question, Trustee Painter, or to adjourn? So we'll go to Trustee Rob Painter for one more question.
I won't dive into it because I realize it's not an agenda item, but will there be an opportunity forthcoming to get a more detailed sort of look at what school may potentially look like in June for this trial run? I have to admit I've had no end of questions in my own head about how this is going to be delivered. Everything from how does a teacher provide in-class support to half her students and online support to the other half, on to whether we're going to get people to do sort of contact tracing in advance so that we know right off the bat if people are being diligent, or if we're going to be looking at kids who are exposed to half the neighborhood coming into school. So just a lot of questions out there. I'm sure everyone else has lots of questions too. I'm just wondering if there'll be an opportunity for us to review that prior to any public announcements or decisions going forward.
Thanks for that question, Trustee Painter. It is definitely a challenging time, and you raise a lot of questions that I know that lots of parents, as well as trustees and teachers and staff, all are having go through their heads at this time. And what we know is we don't have all of those answers at this point. I do know that staff is working very hard on all of those questions. And I think as we kind of are getting closer to the date, we will know more. I am confident that the superintendent will, in our next trustee update, be providing us with some information as to the next steps. But I think where that announcement is very fresh, and we're all still just kind of, I think, recovering from hearing that, and you know, it's like whiplash. We were going one way, we just felt like we knew what we were doing, and now we're going another way. I think it's a little premature today to have any of those answers for you. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in, but I do feel very confident that, oh, I see that Superintendent Green does want to say something, but so go ahead, Superintendent.
Thank you. Yes, it is a very fresh announcement. We had meetings last week. We had a meeting with the Deputy Minister today. I'm aware that some documentation and some clarification is supposed to be coming out towards the end of the week, and a possible another meeting. So I will provide trustees with updates again this week, as we've been continuing to do. We've been meeting with our partner groups, had a meeting with GVTA as well today. Lots of questions, as you said, and hopefully as this week goes along, we'll get a little clearer on some hard and fast expectations that the ministry is heading into, but I certainly will be providing an update this week too.
Excellent, thank you very much, Superintendent. Any other last thoughts or comments from anybody? Okay, I am seeing nobody indicating that. Can I get a motion to adjourn? So Trustee Leonard, and well, I can't use Mr. There you go. Trustee Hensa. All right, all those in favor? Yay, yay, yay. All right, thank you very much for participating on our new mode here. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, guys.